public hearing session, an application or a group application on the agenda is called. The applicant makes his or her presentation, commission members ask questions, if any, members of the public make their comments. Only 4 people may speak for an agenda item or project and 4 against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a loud beep will indicate 1 minute left to speak, and at this point, please summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience. And please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendation. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all applications, the commission will go to the deliberation session. In the deliberation session, the commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application. The results of the voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise in the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, the chairman has the discretion either to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them, or to call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, 1 or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant. Depending upon the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead, unless both supernumeraries are already voted to the absence. The Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, and planned unit developments. The Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decision. Please turn your cell phones off. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. We call roll. I'm Linda Latham. Jennifer Benson. Here. Thomas Doyle.
Here.
Taylor Atchison.
Here.
Nick Amberger.
Here.
John Hembry.
Here.
Jess Wood.
Here.
We have a forum. We will get started. Application number 1 is 8520 Bellingrad Road, Compass Commercial Subdivision. The applicant present. And in agreement with the staff recommendations?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak against it? Thank you. Number 2, 3805 Gulf Creek Court. Applicant present. And in agreement with staff recommendation? Yes. Is anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is anyone here to speak in opposition to it? Number 3, New Country Club Estates Subdivision, 7th Unit. Applicant present. Is the applicant present? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to it? Thank you. Number 4, 4300 McLeod Lane. Applicant present.
Here.
In agreement with the recommendation?
No.
Would you like to come to the podium and speak?
I'm unclear on this recommendation for the holdover. Ronald McLeod, 4300 McLeod Lane.
Okay, Mr. McLeod. This subdivision application has, along the road, has other lots that are not part of your subdivision?
No, my land ties directly into McLeod Lane. That's actually wrong on this plan. McLeod Lane, is to the west of Seaman Drive. When you turn off of McLeod Road, you're turning on to Seaman. You don't turn on to McLeod.
Madam Chairperson?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. The site in question is at the corner up of McLeod and Seaman. Both of those,
Yes.
according to the records we have available via the tax assessor's office, those are private roads. The
Yes.
public right-of-way, you see McLeod Lane running north-south. McLeod Lane then runs into McLeod Road. That is the only public right-of-way. All other access to this property, based on the information staff has available, are private streets.
Okay, so what type of information specifically are you,
The subdivision regulations does allow for family divisions of property on private streets, but you're limited to 5 lots, and it's for family divisions. We would need information regarding the ownership and how many lots are served at a minimum by McLeod Lane, because that is the primary access to the site from the closest known public right-of-way. We would need additional information regarding Seaman Drive as well, as again, those lots would have access, to their only access to a public right-of-way would again be via McLeod Lane. So we need to know family and how many lots. Otherwise, we're looking at construction standards.
Mr. McLeod, how much frontage does your property have on, is it McLeod Lane that it has frontage on?
Yes.
Does it have any frontage at all on Seaman Drive?
No.
So you're strictly talking about the north-south McLeod Lane that your property has frontage on?
That's
Looks
correct.
to me like it's just strictly that corner where it
25
abuts McLeod Lane.
25 feet is all I have frontage on McLeod, the
Okay.
actual McLeod Lane.
So you're trying to take 2 and subdivide that. What's the total overall acreage of your lot?
My total is 2 acres.
Okay. Are you trying to divide this for family purposes?
Yes.
So you're wanting to have two access points off McLeod Lane on a 25-foot wide strip?
No, the existing already has a driveway.
Okay. Would that meet the
4,300.
requirements being that it's family and only 2 lots?
The issue at hand is not simply dividing this one site into 2. It's that the only access for this lot, the lots to the east, are all via private streets. None of them have any frontage on a public right-of-way. And we're looking at documentation to show compliance with the family subdivision standards, which would allow 5 lots for a family division on a private street. Otherwise, you're looking at standards for construction on a private street, and we do not have any, it would be from McLeod Road, then southward for this, and there's no, quote, right-of-way existing for which they could build the street. They'd have to acquire
This
that.
deed says there is right here. It says there's a 60-foot right-of-way right there. McLeod Lane, which is actually Seaman Lane. was established in the 90s. McLeod Lane was established in early 2000. It's a 60-foot right-of-way that ties into Seaman.
Running east to west
Right there. It runs east and west.
across what looks to be, we
It's
don't have
not a
very good maps here, but
dedication.
it runs across the north side of your
That is
of your
correct.
property.
That is correct.
I guess
Mr.
staff's concern is if we subdivide that, it blocks off that access. Is that the concern?
McLeod Road actually goes all the way to right here, McLeod Lane. This is actually Seaman Drive. All these are wrong.
That's north.
Yep.
That's McLeod. That's correct. That's correct. This
But that's
is
not
east,
correct.
west.
Let, see with Joe Regan as your surveyor, that help you with this?
He's actually done the update on there. Bird surveyed it originally, but Regan just updated, but
Can I, if you can wait 2 weeks, I would suggest your surveyor come down and meet with the staff and let's get all this. It's hard for us to figure all this out right now. If your surveyor, whether it's Mr. Bird or Mr. Regan, could come meet with the staff and you can come with them
Okay.
to help figure out where the right-of-ways are and so we can
And
help you
some
do this.
documents.
Whether it's 2 weeks or 4 weeks, however long it takes. But it's just, based on our information, it's going to be hard for us to approve it today without further discussions.
Ms. Pappas, do you think that 2 would hold over sufficient for everybody to get the information they need, or do we need a 4-week hold?
We could have a meeting the early part of next week, but we'd need, revised plans and documents by next Wednesday in order to prepare it for the commission's report.
Mr. McLeod, did you understand that? They'll have to get all the documents and everything by next Wednesday if we only hold it over 2 weeks.
Okay.
They'll have to have everything they need to make their decision, your new updated survey.
Either that or it's
The information about the families and all the information that they need by next Wednesday.
And what information do you want from the families? I mean,
We have to have copies of deeds and a letter
all my family,
from the
from every lot
owner,
that's there.
from the owners on the private streets. Yes, sir. Copy of their deeds and then a letter showing how it's a family division.
Okay?
Do you think you can do that by Wednesday, or do you want a 4-week hold?
I think I can have it done by Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm accused on number 5.
The next application is number 5803, 5807, 5811, and 5812, Walton Lane. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with the staff recommendation? Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Thank you.
Excuse me. I'd like to ask some questions of the applicant, if I may. Thank you. On your proposed plan, at least what I'm looking at, and if we could get that up there, can you tell me what makes this innovative and unique in that it requires a PUD?
Well, the main reason it requires a PUD is for the multiple
Right.
buildings on a single lot. I believe it's innovative because it is using an irregular shaped lot to provide for a multitude of residential housing.
Okay. There is a comment about traffic engineering, and I'm sure you're aware of it, where a study had been done, but in reading this report over, I'll ask the traffic engineering official who's right here with us, what were you asking more for their development to do at that intersection, which would be Long and Old Shell?
I discussed this with the traffic engineering director, and she had indicated wanting a study to be done to review the level of service. There's still some construction going on, so there's still going to be some educated guesses about what the traffic's really going to be like until the hotel is finished. But as far as what could be done, not too much quite frankly, and that's why there's not very strong language to say a study should be done. We did strongly say there would not be a signal at that intersection. Allowing the lefts in the arrangement they are in now is the best of what we can hope for. If we remove the lefts, then we're putting U-turns at the intersection at University and the intersection at East Drive, and that's not very helpful to the situation in the area. So I have had conversation with one of the officers with the USAPD, and it's possible there's some things we could do with what's out there, and mainly it would be trying to get the vehicles not to block the intersection so the lefts can happen when traffic is stopped at the intersection at University, but not necessarily something that we know will exactly help, and it's not going to be this development alone that sets that off. It may be needed already.
Is there a way to look at any kind of future movement as far as coming in off of another, like Allen Drive or something? That's an unimproved, I realize, but it's the next street that it doesn't abut it. But is there any thought about having some kind of circulation? It's just that there's the shopping center that's not developed yet, and like you said, the hotel. And I've seen that intersection in action. I'm sure you have as well. And it really is not the best.
Yeah.
Because of the big development that's now on board. Doesn't show this on this site. Well, it does on the green one, with the green.
Unless a private entity comes and helps, I don't see the city having a plan to do any east-west roads at this point.
Yeah.
The closest point of access could be through the retail that's existing on Old Shell right now at East Drive. Or not East, I'm sorry, I'm getting my streets
Long.
off. No, not Long.
No.
Jaguar.
Oh, okay.
Where that intersection goes into campus and has access on the south side into the shopping center.
Oh, with the traffic light, you mean?
That's potential, but that's kind of outside my realm because it's the two private entities that would need to make that arrangement for that to happen.
Is South allowed to have a traffic person directing traffic during commuter time at all? I mean, what are the laws on our streets that interface with the university?
I am not aware that they use forces on our city streets to direct traffic. They usually turn to us and ask us to make sure what's functioning out there is functioning as best as possible.
Yeah, because you know that stacking lane, the way it is, only 1 or 2 cars will come because they all want to come over it. They actually don't want to stack in it. Have you seen it in action?
You're talking about closer towards Jaguar, or
Well,
actually
what the
trying to turn
Long
onto
Street
Long.
apartments had to put in.
Yeah.
They made it a stacking lane that goes all the way up to that traffic light, but ironically, only 2 cars will come in because they just want to get and merge in.
Right.
They don't want to line up and wait for that light to work. Is it? I mean, I don't know how you can, unless you cemented that they couldn't get over until they were closer up to the light. So you'd have more cars and they wouldn't be.
Well, the intent really isn't for more than 1, maybe 2 cars for them to actually stay in the left turn lane, because as soon as you start allowing multiple cars in that lane, then you have that many cars trying to merge over into the through lane. So we really want them to make the left turn from Long onto Old Shell.
Even though it goes all the way up
And-
to the light?
Yeah, that extension is more to allow them, if it's possible, to use that as an acceleration type of lane and still allow as much stack as possible to go into the retail. Because there's nothing that, there's a bit of a weave that can happen there depending on the traffic that wants to go into that commercial section.
And these are people that are heading west on Old Shell?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. And looking at your property, you have 82 beds, and that means 95 parking spaces to meet code?
91 to meet
91.
code, and we're providing 95.
Yeah. Are there any amenities on there that makes it a unique PUD? Like
I mean, there are going to be a multitude of common spaces, green spaces that the residents can use.
But there's no like meeting room or exercise or anything like
No,
that,
ma'am.
like you see in these kind of plan unit developments? And the trash pickup will strictly be, they'll put a can out front, there's no dumpsters that I could see?
Correct.
So that you'll have private pickup then for that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Thank you. So we'll move to our next application.
Number 6, 4662 and 4666 Oak Ridge Road, applicant present. In agreement with staff recommendations? Would you like to come down and make a statement?
Merlin Miller with McCrory and Williams, and I'm representing the applicant. We have reviewed the staff report, and there are a number of issues there that we would like to have some time to address, and we would ask for a month holdover,
A 1 month holdover?
a 1 month holdover.
What will be the date of the, not the next one, but the one after that? Oh, I've got it, I'm sorry. September 6th, that'll be September 6th?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question? Can this planning commission know what multiple things, reasons for holdover?
Well, there are a number of issues presented here. We thought we had a fairly straightforward submittal, but staff didn't see it that way, and we'd like some time to address this and also hear the comments that some of other people are making, address them as well.
Mr. Miller, have you met with the community at all in the neighborhood areas, the surrounding the property?
I'm sorry.
Have you or the applicant met with the members of the community that's surrounding the property?
I believe the applicant has had some discussion with them, yeah.
Y'all have a chance. Is there any, is that all you have to say, sir?
That's all I
Are there
have.
any other commission questions? Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? It has been requested for all holdovers, it most likely will be. But we will hear today anybody in favor of it or anybody who is opposed to it. And then you can come back when it's held over to. Yes, sir.
So can I make a comment on the proposal now?
Are you here to speak in favor of it?
I'm on Oak Ridge Road, and I'd like to make a comment on the plan.
In favor?
Are you here to speak in favor of the application or against it?
Again, well, against the large part of it.
Sir?
Against part of it.
Then you'll have a chance. Let's get the pros first, okay?
So not the,
Yes, sir, you will have the opportunity to speak today. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to it?
Who
Well,
signed
we can only
up?
have 4, and each one of you has 5 minutes. So, do you want to send down your first?
Stephen Breland, 5770 Chester Court. I am the Regency HOA president.
Yes, sir.
I want to start out and just say that we're all for development that works in conjunction well with residential areas, and the piece that I personally am opposed to, because there's multiple things that's going on here, was the rezoning request of the lot in the corner of Oak Ridge and University. The idea right now is to put a restaurant there. Granted, I know that's not officially set in stone. Regardless of what it is, at this point, that would mean that we would be having a commercial property encroaching into a residential area, and there's tons of vacant commercial property in that same shopping center now that could easily be used. There's 2 restaurants that are there if they want to put another restaurant in. So there's plenty of room of existing vacant properties right there in that area that could be used without having to start gobbling up additional residential areas that that are, zoned for residential now. Secondly, if you're looking at a restaurant, the hours of operation are definitely going to be, are not conducive to residential life. I believe that the request that's put in is to give hours of operation until 10 p.m., I believe. That's just going to give that much more noise, litter, lighting than it's already there. If we were to allow, if it was to be allowed that property was to fall commercial, that's just one step closer to losing the neighborhood identity and the future stability of the area. And also the traffic, if you look at the plans that are on there now, right now, if you go hang out, I encourage you, go hang out right there at 5 o'clock on the afternoon, and you sit on Oak Ridge and you try to get on University, it is next to impossible today to do that without having to sit there for 5 minutes because it's the volume of traffic coming down University. If you have all of the traffic coming out of that restaurant dumping onto Oak Ridge, it's gonna clog that up that much more. And then what's gonna happen is that they're not gonna sit at the University light. They're gonna turn the opposite direction and come barreling through our subdivision to get back out to either Greenlot or Airport. And we already are considered a cut-through neighborhood for folks who don't want to take the time to sit at the corner of Airport and University, and they cut through our neighborhood as it is coming down Westbury, and it's like the Indy 500 in most days. So the fact that you would have an increased amount of traffic for our state of being as the neighborhood, we are definitely opposed to that because that's what's going to happen. Because 9 o'clock last night, and I love Foosackly's. I ate dinner there last night. We're probably majority of our eating out budget, a big chunk of it goes to Foosackly's. So I'm not opposed to Foosackly's. I love me some Foosackly's. I just put that out there on the record. But like 9 o'clock last night, we drove by. There were 12 cars in line in the drive-through. That was way past prime operating hours. So it just goes to show you're going to have there's already a ton of traffic there now, and then if you move that down further than where it is today, that's just going to dump that much more traffic into our neighborhood, and I'm definitely worried about that just for the sake. We have a big walking neighborhood. We have a ton of people walk and bike through our neighborhood all the time, children, people with pets, and you're already having to dodge traffic today as it is, and much less adding on the excessive amount of more traffic that it's going to happen. I mean, it's based on what's been planned here. People, like I said, you can't get out on University now as it is. So people are just going to go down Oak Ridge is what's going to happen. So, and that's all I've got. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Brittle.
Thank you.
I'll take the second speaker. Go. Y'all need to decide who are going to be your speakers.
I'm Judy Miller. I live at 5701 Regency Court North. I want to start by saying I'm not comfortable speaking in public, but I'm very passionate about my property and my neighborhood, so here goes. Regency subdivision is a popular, close-knit neighborhood in a great location. Both my husband and I are Mobile natives, and we finished building our home in Regency in the spring of '87 after living in Midtown for 9 years. I raised 2 daughters here in Regency, and now I'm raising my grandchildren here too. My house backs up to the shopping center in question. I've always done my own yard work, plus I was a jogger, now a walker at my age. And so I've seen the firsthand as the shopping center has aged and developed over the years. There has always been a shopping center runoff problem for the property owners of Regency Court North, more so than Regency Court South, but both courts have a problem. We've diverted water off of our properties by digging ditches, sandbagging, logs and pine straw, railroad ties, terracing, ground cover, and retaining walls. The problem got worse when the shopping center's back driveway was redone and built up higher before Bruno's arrived. Don't get me wrong, I like being within walking distance to the shopping centers. In fact, I love Bruno's and I really miss it because I used to walk up there at least once a week and pick up my prescriptions and groceries. Also fairly recently, the roof was redone on part of the shopping center and large downspouts were installed, which helped redirect the water somewhat, but massive volumes of water come off the shopping center when it rains, and the little small street drains that are old cannot handle all the water. There are a few pictures which I took in the rain to show the large quantities of water that came off the shopping center. I used my cell phone, and there were cars zooming around me in the rain, so sorry for the blurriness. Each one of y'all have the pictures.
Yes, ma'am.
They're on your packet, but I've got larger ones.
Thank you.
The first shows where we're talking about as far as Regency and the shopping center.
Yes, ma'am. I'll take it.
And then the second one's a little bit closer up, how the shopping center backs right up to Regency Court North and Regency Court South. All right, this is the back of the shopping center. It's down as you first come in now near the old Bruno's site is the first one on the packet. And then the second one is a little bit further down. You can see the water pouring out of the downspouts. The next one is about halfway down the shopping center looking back, and you can actually see how the level of the driveway goes towards the homeowners. And then the next one is, you can see there's no curb. The curb is already underwater, so it's filled up the back and it's into the grass and going through the fence where the residents are. Then the next one is one of the roofs that water is just pouring down. There's no downspouts on it. It's a little bit further down. It's hard for me to tell. I think it's probably where Ashley Furniture is, or the old Ashley Furniture. And like I said, there's no downspouts, so it's just pouring. And then there's two drains. The only reason you could tell they were drains is they were clogged up with leaves and debris. And you could see kind of a dark spot. Same thing on this one.
Those are drains in their parking lot or in, or?
Yes, there's like a little, well, this is the back, so it's like
Right.
the back.
Right.
And cars drive through there constantly. Okay, these are the rest of the pictures. Y'all all see them, so I'll go ahead. The very end of them are, these are the drainage ditch, the open culvert that's to the side, and there's a very, very small pipe in there. Regency subdivision is always trying to deal with our present runoff problems due to the shopping center and the old small drainage pipes, plus dealing with high-speed, non-residential traffic that always cuts through our neighborhood. I can attest to this also, since I walk every morning and literally jump into the grass at least once a week to keep from getting hit. There are plenty of vacant areas that can be used and developed in both shopping centers that already exist around Regency. So there's no need to rezone and add to our present problems in Regency. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Your time and consideration in the matter is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Thank you.
I hope you've had adequate time to look at the materials. I'm Kathy O'Keefe. I live at 5713 Vendome Drive South. I'm on the Regency HOA board. I'm also a member of the Mayor's Committee on Rezoning. So I've been meeting with the consultants. We've been having city meetings, getting public input, as you all know, and hope and are looking forward to a new day when development like this will be really well coordinated with the neighborhood so that everybody gets what they want. That's really our bottom line. We all want everybody to get, we know development's going to happen there. We just don't want it to be haphazard. We don't want to add to flooding because there are severe downhills in this in this area, and you're going to see it. We have a whole stretch where there isn't a storm drain for 760 feet straight down Oak Ridge Road until it gets to a little area where the houses begin to be different. I don't know if you know this area. I always, am worried that our Planning Commission members haven't really seen and know what we're talking about. But Stephen is right. You would take your life in your hands coming out of Oak Ridge trying to turn left because the cars are coming over the rise so fast. That, according to the planning staff, is where the dumpster delivery pickup people will go in. They'll go in off of the private street, the residential street. That's where the delivery trucks for the produce will go in, because that's how they'll access back the store. And 35 parking spaces that are designated for what they would like to put on this would all enter and exit out of Oak Ridge Road till 10 o'clock at night. I know the lady who lives on this property. She's 96 years old. I'm taking care of her niece today in intensive care at the hospital. And, you know, you give up after a while. You just give up, you know, and they've been out there for years and years before things were developed there. So I understand what her family's trying to do. They're trying to get out while they can, and I don't blame them. It's just that we want it to be done right. And I feel that if you would just accept the planning department's recommendation for denial, give us a chance to go in with the developer when these new zoning strategies and policies are put in place, and let's do something great. The shopping center is a ghost town. I'm sure you know that. And our residents are so shocked. And I'd like to just ask, who came today from our neighborhood, please? And also raise your hand again if you're representing neighbors who couldn't come today because they work. These are people who deeply care about developing a neighborhood we really want to stay and live in. And we're asking you to give us a chance to do that by denying this application. Now, Mr. Cummins met with one representative of Regency, Stephen, and Bess Rich, but there's been no come into the neighborhood and talk to us, and we have plenty of places to do that, from the library to the synagogue. We'd be happy to meet with them, go over the plans. We want it to be good. When I talked to Mr. Cummins about the drainage problem going back into Judy Street, he said, I can't do anything about that. Whoever leases my stores has to take care of the drainage behind the store. I said, you got to be kidding me. There's a giant road that the trucks come in and out of. And of course, they're all, most of them are empty now. We have Family Dollar and I think one little nail salon. But everybody is saying, why would you want to do this and leave all this other property undeveloped, sitting there, growing weeds, and give the neighbors the feeling, and this is what you would be doing. You would give the neighbors the feeling that you really don't care, because it's already bad enough as it is. So I don't think you can lose anything by denying. I think what we can do, if denial is upheld, is give this man a chance to come to us. Maybe we can talk about how he could make his shopping center better, because he sure isn't doing a good job on that, we don't think. And then let's work together. And let's get a plan where when we turn down that corner, we know the whole thing's falling. I mean, it was all residential. I was at the first meeting when University Boulevard was developed. And you know what the Planning Commission told the neighbors? That this was never going to be developed commercially, because the purpose of University Boulevard between Cottage Hill and Airport was to carry traffic quickly, not to add additional burdens of retail. And we believed it. We believed it. And that kind of integrity means something to residents, because we went out and bought our houses there, thinking that that's what was going to happen. So we want to maintain that integrity. We want to get a plan out there that we can be happy about, and so can the developer. Thank you.
Thank you.
We can take one more speaker. Yes, sir.
Steve Bailey, 4675 Oak Ridge Road. I'm across the street and 2 houses down from the affected property. And I'd like to add my comments to the previous speakers and emphasize a couple of points in particular. Everybody's talked about the traffic situation, but it's even worse than they have indicated, because the plan that's shown shows both an entrance and an exit off of Oak Ridge Boulevard into the restaurant. The previous speakers have talked about the difficulty of exiting Oak Ridge Road on University, but it's just as hard getting into Oak Ridge Road off of University, because people are coming down University at a real clip. You're forced to turn that corner at a real fast rate, and there within a couple of feet of that corner, and it's almost blind, is that driveway. Now, I've lived in our current location for 27 years, and even back to the point where there was a house in that location. And whenever the property owner of that location tried to come in out of their property, which is rare, it presented a real problem, and having multiple vehicles entering and exiting, and I'm going to emphasize at this point the exiting part and the entering part, you're going to get a whole bunch of collisions with the people who are trying to turn into Oak Ridge and not realizing there's that traffic there. So it's going to be a real hazard, and I don't see any way around that other than to at least eliminate that exit and entrance. And maybe got to have that loop, I don't know. Moreover, I don't know if you've been to Oak Ridge, but if you look down Oak Ridge from University, you can see that it's a very nice tree-lined avenue. It needs to stay that way in order to maintain our property values. So any development that is on that corner has to maintain proper vegetation, trees, hedges, whatever, so that we look the same. I'm not going to go beyond what the previous speakers said because they said what I would say anyway. So I want to emphasize those 2 points. We need to maintain the vegetation to maintain our property values, and that corner is just a real hazard to add any traffic to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Would the applicant like to come make any comments? Thank you very much. We'll move into the. I'm sorry?
I would like to speak on something that you did not touch on that I feel is very important.
In opposition to the development? I'm sorry, ma'am, we've had 4 speakers, that's all we're allowed is to have 4 against. We will, no ma'am, we have 4, and we will, it will more than likely be held over it, so you will have the opportunity to come back. Thank you.
Can I speak about this subject matter while everyone is still here, because when we go into our executive session, some might be gone, but I understand the applicant's desire to hold it over, and the staff's report certainly was in favor of denial for at least the section that was looking at the rezoning going from the R1 to the LB2. And I think what's stunning to me in listening to the residents, and also I did have an opportunity to meet with with an interested party from the development side, which one time I was with the owner of the property who will be selling part of their lot, and then also with Mr. Breland, who represented the neighborhood at large. I do stress the need for larger meetings, and I hope that prior to the 6th, if it is the will of this planning commission, that take place with the developers and more of the neighbors' presence. The thing that concerns me is the attitude that it has to go commercial, and it happened on the Oak Ridge part of the neighborhood because University Boulevard divides this neighborhood. Regency Oaks is attached to Oak Ridge, and Dogwood is really what it's called, and they let go their covenants, but we don't deal with covenants when we talk about zoning, but that does not make the property commercial. It is residential. That is a big entry point to a very large, well-established neighborhood. And the encroachment that represented, there's no reason to think that there isn't value for landowners that have property in the residential configuration, but we never put enough value on that. And that's where you get the destabilization. And if it was up to me, I would urge the Planning Commission to just recommend the denial, not that there shouldn't be conversation with landowners that live next to each other, but the stress that this places on residents and the message that it sends is very, it's just negative. Instead of saying you live in a really fine neighborhood, and and the property that's across the street that's been vacant forever that fronts University can easily have a brick wall that fronts onto University, just like this other side, and become residential. Look at Rochester Place. Look at things on Old Shell Road. For some reason, those neighborhoods retain their value in some people's minds. And in others, we have 4-lane streets, so it has to become commercial if you front it. That does not help people wanting to invest in our city. And I am looking forward to the new codes, and that would be another reason to deny now, because I am hopeful that this city is going to start taking into account investing in the residents that are already on the ground just stabilize and make their communities and neighborhoods stronger, not just out in 6, but everywhere. So I'm going to advocate that we do go with the staff report and still say that there can be all kinds of development on that site. And I know it will be the will of the Planning Commission to do, and I just have one vote, but again, to watch this happen over and over again is just very distressful to me, because we don't value what's already there and try to help and maintain it. And that's a detriment for the city at large. Thank you.
We will now move into our deliberation phase, number 1, Compass Commercial Subdivision.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That application is approved. 3805 Gulf Creek Court.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 3, North Side of Airport Boulevard, New Prince Club Estates.
I'll move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Number 4, 4300 McLeod Lane.
Move to hold over until August 16th with proper documentation being into staff by next Wednesday, August 8th. Yeah.
Second.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. It will be held over until August the 16th. Application number 5, I'm recused on that.
Numbers 5803, 5807, 5811, and 5812 Waltman Lane. It's recommended for tentative approval.
Mr. Chairman, can we take these one at a time?
If you would like to, we can.
Okay. Move to approve the zoning request based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Can we discuss?
Are there any questions?
Not a question, just to discuss. I don't know if any of you will recall, I think it's probably about a year and a half ago when the Longstreet Apartments came on board and the residents on Waltman Lane came down to tell us how they felt very squeezed in. Well, you don't hear them down here today because they've actually been bought out by this. And I get all that. But again, the rezoning is the R3. Would R2 be better on this site with less impact? Knowing that it's an intersection, are we allowed to entertain a downzoning from the applicant? Because this is going to an R3, but if we did R2, would there be less on that footprint?
R2 would not allow the number of units proposed.
That's what I'm saying, but we would have that, we would be able to discuss that. They've made an application, they want the 82 bedrooms, but we're hearing that there's we've got a hotel that's not even on board yet. And how many rooms in that hotel, do we know? Well, we got a shopping center that's coming on, and now we're looking at this. So is it in the city's best interest? Is it in the corridor's best interest to rezone to the R3? I know the residents that used to live there are gone, so that's good. I mean, we're not inflicting anything directly on them. But what is how do we make sure that everything we build doesn't become a problem or become where people don't want to live? Because it was an applicant's desire at the time without knowing the impact it would have.
Well, don't we have an area here surrounded by R3 property?
Yes, we do.
And people want to live in this area or they wouldn't be creating the density that they're trying to create, right?
What would the R2 designation, what would the number of units be in that case?
The property is 2.5 acres, and under R2, you have to allow 8,000 square feet per duplex, if you were to look at it that way. So that would allow a total of 27 dwelling units. So that would be 13.5 buildings with 2 units per building. And they are only proposing 27 cottages. But each cottage would then have 4 bedrooms, and some would have 3 and some would have 2. So, you know, based on the R2, you could probably allow the number of structures to allow the number of units, but then the parking requirement, because of its location and proximity to the university, is based on the number of bedrooms. Again, though, since it is surrounded by commercial uses as well as the R3 zoning, R3 seems appropriate rather than R2.
And the infrastructure can handle it.
That would be determined during the plan review process when they apply for land disturbance permits as well as for building permits. So that would be a process that would be reviewed at that time.
So going from R3 to R2 is really not going to accomplish anything as far as density?
From what they're proposing, not really. It would prevent perhaps, if you did a pure R3, you could put about 68 units, individual dwelling units, or one apartment building with 68 units in it. But those, quote, units could have as many bedrooms as possible, so.
Well, it's, again, as we all know, it's not really the density, it's just the traffic getting out on Old Shell is a concern that we all have, but as traffic has already said, there's not much we can
So if
change
it's
about that.
zoned to R3 and this development is not actually acted on, we've had that before, then you're saying it could even get more than what is placed on here? How do we tie the zoning? Because I'm not getting a good sense that it's going to look at, we're going to look at it R2.
You have a PUD tied to it.
Tie the PUD to the rezoning?
I'm saying there's a PUD that's being submitted as well. So I
Right,
mean,
but is it tied to the rezoning? Because once we go with the R3,
to the site.
We are not going to allow any more rezonings approved tied to a PUD.
Okay,
There's just
so
too
we're-
many legal problems, but to
Okay.
answer your question, it wouldn't be a blanket approval to add more buildings because they would have to get a PUD approved. So you would still have control over it in the future if it's R3, and then they say, well, we don't want to do this plan, we want to do a plan with more buildings. They still have to come back for
they have to come
future
back, but the
approval.
enabling rights would be the R3. So what would be the argument of a future planning commission to say that they couldn't put the most number of beds in an R3 configuration on that property? What would there be legal issues with denying them their rights?
You could rely on traffic issues. That this was, you could, I think, have legal standing to deny if based on them getting a PUD, you say that the PUD is not proper for that particular location.
So what people get shown when they walk away, a PUD and the zoning don't stay together, that's a decision, that's a legal decision that they will not be, one won't follow the other?
Correct. We can not, the easiest way for me to put it is we should not, I can't tell you you cannot, we should not tie zoning approvals to a PUD, to a specific use.
And that's
Or
the reason
PUD.
we're approving this particular PUD, not connected with zoning, so that in the
Correct.
future, if they were to come back and try to change this PUD, they have to get approval before
Exactly.
that can happen.
Yes, yes. We're not, I misspoke. We're not going to attach a particular, a rezoning to a particular
Correct.
use.
We're rezoning this on its own merits and building on
Exactly.
it by itself.
Exactly.
Aren't we moving towards new planning codes that kind of talk about use and configuration as a way to model the city in a fashion that residential and commercial can?
We are moving toward a new zoning code, but we cannot view this one or judge this one or vote on this one based on what we think the new code might be. We have to vote on it as based on the
Okay.
code we have now.
But I will say, from the Flume locator map, from what I can tell, it looks like it's getting a higher zoning classification than what it currently is being proposed as. Just to point out,
Under the Flume.
under the Flume.
We had a motion already, right, in a second?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second? I know there was a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Motion from Mr. Hembry, seconded by Mr. Amberger.
Thank you.
On the zoning.
Any other questions or discussion?
Just to be clear, so we're starting with zoning and then we're
Yes.
going to work backwards in the, I'm looking at the, so we're going to go to subdivision and PUD, and is that how you wanted to take them?
Doesn't
I
matter.
just started
They're
out
not
with zoning.
tied together. What
Okay.
difference does it make?
Well, right now, the question before the commission is on the zoning.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Ms. Rich and Thomas, sorry, I'm blanking on your last name, have opposed. Moving on to the next section of the findings of fact for the, I'm sorry, wait a minute, tentative approval for the subdivision based on the findings of fact, and there's, okay. It's recommended for approval and tentative approval. Are we?
Ms.
going to take
Denson,
those
the
together?
findings of fact is for the plan unit development only,
The PUD.
Yeah, the
not for the
Okay,
subdivision.
I'm sorry, that's, I kept glancing, looking for that. So, okay, do we want to take those together, or do you want to motion
I'd
separately?
like to do them separate, please.
Separately.
Okay, so first we'll take the subdivision request for, recommended for tentative approval. Is there a motion?
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. And then finally, the PUD, with the staff recommended findings of fact, and the application is recommended for approval. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the PUD based on staff recommendations with the listed findings of facts A, B, C, and D.
Second.
I'd like to recommend striking B and C from the findings of fact. This site is currently all pervious surface with trees, and we're adding a lot of impervious surface right next to a creek, so I don't think it falls into the environmental objective or the efficient land use objective, given the extent of impervious development on this site, particularly given its proximity to stream.
Yeah.
Well, the proposal was for A, B, C, and D, and what we could remove, you're saying remove B because the proposal, B says the proposal promotes it, objective of efficient land use to encourage the most efficient and sustainable use of land, especially tracts and in the parts, inner parts of the city that remain undeveloped or that appropriate for development because of utilizing infill development practices. And then C addresses the same thing. So I'm willing to revise my proposal, my motion, and remove B and C.
I'll leave my second in place.
So what sticks to make it a PUD?
A and D.
A and D.
Which are,
Creative design and public services.
that's creative design?
I don't think so, but I don't know that I have a basis for justification to strike that.
Is there any further discussion? With a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
The motion passes.
Number
Number
6.
4662 Oak Ridge Road. If the applicant has requested a holdover, I will make that motion.
Second.
Holdover for 4 weeks until September the 6th.
Okay, can I ask from some clarification, probably from staff on this? Now, the rezoning is the R1 to the LB2, but there's also a rezoning for what is the current footprint. So we're holding up everything, we're being asked to hold up everything, although the contention is really not what's going on in that shopping center, other than some drainage issues, which would be a good reason to sit down. And so, I mean, I think there's reason enough to sit down on that aspect of the rezoning, because you're going, and you're actually downzoning a request. It's B3, some of it's B3, but it's all going to go into B2. Isn't that correct?
It was my understanding the applicant requested a holdover for number 6, which included
everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the holdover to September 6th?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
That application will be held over till September 6th. You are welcome to come back and be heard again at that point in time if you'd like to.
Ms. Latham?
Take a moment and
I apologize. Staff didn't get who made the motion and the second for the
I
hold.
made the motion, Mr. Amberger seconded
Second.
it.
Thank you.
I'd like to also recommend on this particular application, as in all applications, that the developers and the neighborhood try to get together and so that the residents of the neighborhood understand what is attempting to be done and voice their opinion. And I think I speak for myself, but I'm assuming the rest of the planning commission feels the same way, that that's a good way
Absolutely.
to work through
Be
some
nice.
issues prior to it coming forth. Thank you. Is there any further business? Ms. Pappas, any further business? There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
That seems so weird. I mean, if it's like a brick fence, if that group would build them some nice, but you don't even know it's there. It's almost like you're pulling into the woods in the countryside somewhere. So.
Well, this, because university divided the neighborhood. See, like, that's the older, these people have been around here since like I think the 60s. And then this came in the late 70s.
Yeah.
So,
I have seen that parcel right there.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah, but the thing is, why can't that just all be a residential,
Well,
like a
let me give you,
R2?
Let me give you a developer's perspective of that. About the developer's property. If you were going to try to do that, the only thing you could potentially come down here and do would be come in here and control something.
Yes, sure.
To make the money work. Because that road right there probably cost you $200,000
Sure.
to build. So to do that, you'd have to have this on average, $40,000 road. So you'd have to have